Introduce myself first of all. So my name's Dominic Ridley-Moy and I run the Behaviour Change Network, provide training in applying behaviour change theory for comms, operational and policy professionals. So these lunchtime sessions are all about bringing behaviour change to life. And today is all about bringing AI and behaviour change to life together. So we've got a really stellar lineup panel, really excited to hear what everyone has to say this lunchtime. And we're broadly going to discuss how AI can help bring about positive behaviour change. But I'm sure there's lots of other things we're going to cover this lunchtime as well. So usual online etiquette, so cameras on or off, although you may not be able to turn your cameras on in Teams webinar. Mics off, please. And do ask any questions you have as we go along in the chat, please, and we'll pick these up. So this session is being recorded, and we'll make a recording available. And if you're a member of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, the session is worth 5 CPD points. And as I was saying earlier, we've got really good turnout, which is great. So behaviour change and AI, I think probably AI is winning over behaviour change at the moment. So I think this may have been my most popular webinar today, so beats the webinar and the ComD model. So without further ado, I'm going to ask all of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then I'll hand over to Andrew to kick things off. So I'll come to Andrew first. Do you just want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Andrew Bruce Smith. I've worked in PR, communications, and media for 38 years. OMG, but I like to say that my interest in AI extends over 40 years. Since 2018, I've been a member of the CIPR's AI and PR panel. And have been for the last several years current chair of the panel. We've clearly been doing a lot of kind of work and research and publishing reports kind of over that time. So I'm very much looking forward to kind of sharing insight from our most recent report, which came out a couple of weeks ago, but also reflecting on and looking at what's happened in the last 12 months a lot, and where we are now and where things are going.
That's great, thank you. And I'll come to Sylvia next.
Thank you, Dominic, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sylvia Cambier. I'm a partner at Wipro's Talent and Change practice. Wipro is an international technology company of Indian parentage. We are we work all over the world. We have 258,000 employees, and in my practice, I work on the people, culture, and behaviors part of technology rollouts. I have a background in AI because I used to work with IBM, and I worked with IBM Watson, particularly on workplace transformation. I also have a background in journalism, financial journalism from the start of my career, and then PR. And I feel very passionate about AI, in particular, about the ethical side and the relationship between human and machine and how we will be shaping it going forward. So I very much look forward to discussing that with you today.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, Tiernan.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name's Tiernan. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at a company called Hello Lamppost. Just very briefly, so we're a chat-based platform that has AI at its core, so very pertinent to today. But what we do is we essentially add digital assistants to any physical location outside of the home. So we work with anyone from councils to hospitals to museums and theme parks to any public space really, and property developers, all revolved around how can we give people better assistance and easier access to information in a location. And how can we make the organizations or allow the organizations who look after those places to understand their audience better, to hear more voices and to reach more people. So we boil it down to what our platform provides essentially is, imagine you could have hundreds or sometimes thousands of staff members out in those locations, out in those places, speaking to those people, helping those people. That's what we kind of automate, all done through the chat-based platform through people's mobile devices. Pleased to be here. Looking forward to it.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, we've got a really varied lineup of speakers, which I think will make for a really interesting panel discussion. So thank you again for coming along. So I'm now going to hand over to Andrew just to say a few words about the ever-moving world of AI, just to set the context. We're going to go into the panel discussion.
Okay, great. Well, I think best place to start is maybe just to step back for a second and just, as I say, reflect that not even a year has elapsed since ChatGPT was unleashed upon the world on November the 30th last year. It's extraordinary to think what has happened in the intervening kind of 11 months or so. Probably more change in 11 months than in the previous sort of 11 years. As I say, my role as kind of chair of the CIPR AI in PR panel. Our most recent piece of research was where we talked to just under 400 communication professionals around the world of all levels of seniority, all sectors, etc. Very simple question, really. Are you using AI? And if you are, what are you using it for? And one of the headline figures from that research showed that it would seem that 40% of all communications tasks today are being done or at least augmented by AI in some shape or form. I'm pretty confident if we'd asked that question just over a year ago, it would have been close to zero in terms of the technology supporting communications generally. Now, when you drill into the nuance of it, clearly the vast majority of that AI usage is very much around the use of it for content generation. Now, clearly, creating content, generating content is not the only thing that communicators are involved with, and far from it. So I think the first point to make is that an enormous amount has happened in just the space of 11 months or so. Clearly, people are kind of using it for certain things, but there's an awful lot more potentially where kind of AI can play a role. And again, I think it's important to think about it not just through the lens of how it supports and shapes communication, but patently the influence it's having on just about virtually every aspect of of human life. And I guess if you're looking at behavior change in its kind of more broader sense, I think that kind of interplay between behavior change comms and actual behavior change and the role of AI on both sides of the fence, really definitely something to kind of look at and explore. Just to go back to what we were talking about at the start, it's a bit of a cliche but true. The pace of technological AI development really is quite remarkable. If you'd asked me a year ago that yes, within 12 months technology will be freely or inexpensively available that could do all these things, I would have probably laughed. It just didn't seem remotely feasible that would occur. There's not anybody on the planet that could have foreseen that this is where we'd be in 12 months' time, prior to ChatGPT launching, and that's just sort of unlocked this kind of tsunami of AI development. To keep the kind of finger on the pulse, that this week in the AI world has been a buzz. I think that's the right phrase to use. A buzz with what OpenAI revealed, launched, announced on Monday at their first ever developer conference. Just very quickly, souped up new enhanced version of GPT, which will be available to anybody who is prepared to pay to access ChatGPT Plus. Faster. Its ability to kind of ingest even larger amounts of information. The launch of so-called GPTs, i.e. kind of mini customized versions of GPT for whatever purpose you might think to put it to. The fact that you can now augment the AI model with knowledge and information both internally and externally, and the beginnings of the process of being able to get the AI to kind of talk to other applications. in short, this is a concept that's been talked about a lot, I think, in the AI world over the last several months. This notion of so-called autonomous AI, because right now you go to GPT, say, and you ask it to give it a prompt, and you get something back, but it doesn't think, doesn't reason, doesn't do anything autonomously or independently. That clearly is sort of the potential kind of next phase of development. Amongst the many kind of luminaries in the industry, I always pay attention to Yann LeCun, who heads up AI at Meta Facebook. You should definitely watch his YouTube video from May, where he talks about autonomous AI, or rather he describes it as objective intelligence. He said, you mentioned autonomous AI and it scares people, so we have to give it a different name. So let's call it objective intelligence. But the underlying principle is the same. Building AI systems capable of being tasked with doing something and then kind of going off and doing it. So I'm sure there are lots of implications or ramifications for behavior change per se, as well as behavior change communication. So I think just to summarize all of that, what a wild ride we've had in the last 11 months. My prediction is it's going to be another wild year ahead. I can't see at the moment that pace of technological development is going to slow down anytime soon. So I guess let's, if you haven't already buckled up, you better do it now, because as I say, I think sitting back and hoping that it's all going to quieten down or the dust's going to settle anytime soon, I think is highly unlikely. And it really is a case of being kind of proactive and trying to kind of navigate through these very, very uncharted waters.
Excellent, thank you. Well, let's try and do that now in the next hour. So we are going to take up the full hour because we've got a lot to cover. And I should probably say, from a GDPR point of view, we are recording the session, but we've also, I think we've got 3 AI assistants as well, which are taking notes and recording. So it'd be interesting to do an AI assistant off and see which one is the better one. So we'll let you know what comes out of that. So the first question is, I'm going to bring it back to behaviour change, because there's lots of challenges out there today that behaviour change theory and AI can help solve working together. So many of the people on the call are from public sector organisations. So problems like the cost of living crisis, tackling debt, public health, recycling, littering, climate change, all those really big issues are things that I know a lot of people in the virtual room are grappling with. So to kick off the question I'm going to start with and ask each panellist is, bearing in mind these issues, how can AI help people make better choices? So I'm going to come to Sylvia first.
Yeah, so I think it's really the fact that we can make much better informed decisions using smart analytics and training the system with data sets, so that while in the past a lot of our decisions were made on gut feeling or based on experiences from the past, now we assuming we have the right data, we can train the system to really support us in these decisions. Obviously, as far as the issues you mentioned are concerned, what is very, very important is that the way we train the system and the data we train it with is free of bias, and is free of bias, related to a certain demographic, gender, anything. So that is a very big challenge as I see it at the moment, because with this, given the hype, given this excitement about the fact that AI moved from curation to creation. So before we were using it to basically teach the system and get information and use it for our decision making. Now we can really use engines to create content for us, right? So that we've gone on that journey over the past 12 months, and hence the excitement. And so I think that the ethics question and the bias question has taken a back seat, and I'm worried about that, particularly in the public sector. So to give you an example, if we take genome research, 86% of the research carried out in the world today is carried out based on the genes of people of white European ancestry. So that means that for the remaining 8 billion people in the world, there is no representation. And that's just an example of how we use data to train these systems. So we should definitely, shine the light again on bias and discuss how to help create systems that keep AI in check.
I think that's a really good point, and that's something we'll come back to, because I think that for me, certainly with behaviour change and clearly with AI as well, the issues of ethics and bias in terms of data is a huge issue. So it'd be good to kind of unpick that a bit further. Andrew, did you want to come in next?
Sure. I mean, just to pick on a couple of things that Sylvia's pointed out there. I mean, the bias issue, absolutely, I totally agree. That's something that absolutely it's there and definitely should not be ignored. The bigger question clearly now is how do we kind of collectively or individually going to mitigate against that? The simple fact is that it doesn't matter what large language AI model you're using, by default they are largely built in a similar way. They're largely built by trying to obtain as much human text and content as possible. So what a surprise, the web is an obvious first port of call. And of course, the web reflects humanity, good, bad, and indifferent, with all the inherent bias there present. So again, there's a bias starting point. All the AI companies, I'm sure, will tell you that they're doing their level best to mitigate against it. I think it's a bit of a losing battle. I don't think they're ever going to fully mitigate against it. That perhaps then places an onus upon us as the users of those systems to see what we can do to kind of try and mitigate and eradicate against those biases. I mean, just to kind of pick up on some of the announcements this week, it's a double-edged sword. On the one level, you could argue it opens up the ability to fine-tune and train, say, GPT in a way that reduces its bias, if that is your motivation. Sadly, of course, it opens up the possibility that those who wish to bias it in a particular way can also do the same. So in many ways, it's not so much the technology per se; it's what we human beings choose to do with it. But absolutely, it's inherently sort of part of the kind of base system, and in spite of the efforts of each individual company to do it, I think there's still a huge responsibility on those of us that propose to utilize the technology for particular purposes in the context of this session, obviously surrounding behavior change. And I just a quick example. I mean, AI technology has been used in recruitment for years. The use of AI personality assessment tools has been around for quite some time. That's not new. Now, again, are people aware that these technologies are being used in the recruitment process? Do the recruiters or organizations using these AI personality tools have any clue how the particular AI algorithm being used there has been trained? What data sets is it utilizing? Are organizations unknowingly over relying on these AI systems to make recruitment decisions without realizing that there may well be some bias? I think I'm right in saying Amazon a few years ago got caught out by this. They were using an AI algorithm for recruitment, and it turned out they asked the question, why do we keep hiring men and no women? It's like, well, because your AI was fundamentally biased in that respect. So they learned very early on the danger there of the use of the technology in that very specific instance. So yes, there's almost kind of equal amounts of excitement, opportunity, which I think sensible people will have to kind of balance with major sort of issues around bias and other things, copyright, legality, ethics, that I think it would be rather foolish to just ignore or not pay enough attention to.
Yeah, and I think a big issue will be for everyone on the call to think about, I suppose, how we start navigating that and the governance around that. I'm going to ask Tiernan to come in next. and particularly, I think, from your point of view and the work you do at Hello Lamppost, thinking about potentially some of the practical applications of AI.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to touch on the ethics part very, very quickly, I think I'll caveat with that I'm an eternal optimist, and that I think if you look at history and advances in technology, I think bar none, as a society, we have done a pretty good job overall on asking these questions when new technology arises. So again, caveat that I'm an eternal optimist, but I think there's a lot of barriers and things are moving a lot quicker than any previous technology. But I think the fact that we're talking about it now is one indication that the right questions are being asked along the way. And the pressures are being put in the right place, perhaps not at the level that we need just yet, but the pressures are being put in the right place to ask those ethical questions. Yeah, on the practical applications of kind of AI around behavior change, I think it's worth just taking a slight step back and just mentioning that AI typically gets discussed in very broad terms, which is completely understandable. When we talk about things like behavior change and practical applications, actually what we're talking about is artificial narrow intelligence, so specific goal-orientated AI. So that's where I think it becomes more powerful, because that's when it's more practical, narrow applications to our everyday lives. A really simple example of that would be a task to use GPT to create your LinkedIn posts, right? That's a really narrow use, and it's very good at that because it creates very legible natural language. But I think that's where we are seeing, and I have a strong belief that there's going to be a big shift towards more narrow uses when it comes to AI, and as it becomes kind of more commonly used and people's knowledge kind of develops, actually we're going to see more narrow and narrow uses of AI, and that's kind of already exists to an extent, but it also plays into our world in a kind of a very kind of small splice. But things like using artificial intelligence to detect irregularities in medical scans like MRIs and different medical tests, like that's already being used, and is a really narrow use of AI. Similarly, financial fraud detection within financial institutions, like AI is being used with a specific goal there. And very similar to behavior change, with what we do actually specifically, it is things like adding a digital assistant in public locations to identify and help with suicide awareness and prevention. So those people that are in need in those locations that have been identified, and they are in a kind of a high risk situation or in high need of support, where it's not feasible to have people in those locations supporting people 24/7. That's a really kind of narrow use with a specific goal to use AI. Similarly, I'm just going to talk about a couple of our examples, but similarly, changing behavior around waste and recycling at home. Actually, why not have a digital assistant where people can chat to their bin or chat to their kind of fridge magnet around what they can and can't recycle? It's a great way of in the moment using AI to change that behavior. And I guess also some of our work with the Environment Agency, it's not feasible where they're putting work and capital projects in place to protect communities from flooding, which is pretty pertinent at the moment. They have very few ways to engage those people. Climate change is happening, and putting flood defences is not the end answer. Actually, there is education and behaviour change that needs to happen alongside that. And like our work with them is one example of how to use AI in a very goal orientated way. So I think all that to say, just to summarize, I think it's right to have the kind of broader AI discussions, but I think for practical applications for everyone every day, it's also beneficial to talk about, let's go back to what the problem is. In your job, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and can AI help that? And whether that technology exists or that model exists already is a different question. But I think that's quite a practical conversation that we often have is when we start working with a partner or an organization, you know, there sometimes is either a reticence or there's an over optimism to use AI because it's the buzz thing at the moment, but actually it's useful to come back to what's the problem.
And I think you articulated that very well, because for me, I think the problem with behaviour change and sometimes things that can get missed because behaviour change is so complex and there's so many things that affect decision making. Focusing on that very specific behaviour you want to choose is a good way of narrowing it down. So I'm just going to bring in Sylvia on the point that you made, Tiernan, about I suppose kind of narrowing it down and sort of bringing it to sort of more specific applications, and that as a way to have kind of I suppose more practical tips and usage for AI. Do you agree with that, Sylvia? Is that where you kind of see it going in terms of sort of more narrow applications, and where the kind of future is in terms of how tools can help?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. I think, you know, we are at the moment, because of ChatGPT, focusing on the artificial narrow intelligence. But I think what is really interesting is the artificial general intelligence, AGI, that, you know, everybody is kind of holding their breath to see how it's going to develop, because it's going to be something that basically, like if you take a communications plan, it will be able to develop all its aspects, you know, do some, you know, work on some training platforms, some videos, create your copy, you know, schedule your events, organize your events. So something like, you know, a human would do, sort of. So this form of AI that is not just focused on one task, but create links and build bridges between different tasks. And at the moment, the attempts are, you know, are a bit clunky. In terms of the sort of narrow use of AI, I would like to focus on ChatGPT that, you know, we are all sort of using and we're being asked to use by clients. And I think that at the moment there is a lot of confusion. I think I mentioned that to you guys when we were preparing for this. Someone I'm working with was asked to clean up her copy, asked by a client, with ChatGPT. Well, no, ChatGPT is not going to do that. It's not going to train your people. It's not going to transform how they work. It's not going to reskill your people. It's going to provide a base, right? If you have to grow your people, you have to, you know, do their professional development. So I think that's kind of an example of where we are at the moment, of this misunderstanding of the fact that AI can provide a component, but the human has to build on that. And so I kind of, my worry at the moment is that we are kind of, we tend to expect too much of these narrow intelligence applications and tools that are coming on the market now. And also we are forgetting this overall question of how we link them all together. And when we link them all together, how will we regulate them? And how will we take care of different aspects? You know, bias is one of them. Gender is another one, and diversity and inclusion. Someone asked a question. So we should keep both in mind.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to ask Andrew to pick up on those points and come in.
Yeah, I just maybe realised, I think was it yesterday, the day before, there was a new report came out from Demos, the think tank, looking at the impact of AI on work and jobs generally. And so one of the kind of headline findings there was the potential impact of AI on you know, junior staff. Is it kind of removing the kind of the bottom rung of kind of career development, and you know, asking, you know, big questions about, well, is that just jobs that will go, or does it change the nature of the work for kind of junior staff? You know, what kind of, you know, turning employees more into that mentoring role becomes even more crucial at the very start of the career ladder, the career process. And to tie it back to the kind of, you know, bias, diversity, inclusion issue, the view that actually AI could potentially have a more devastating effect on certain communities, ethnicities. Basically, people can poorer backgrounds potentially stand to have much more to lose by the impact of AI. Anyway, it's a really interesting report. If you don't read all 40 pages, then get an AI to summarize it for you, because it will pull out the main points. I thought it was, again, to Sylvia's point about it's kind of joining the dots. It's understandable. So much is happening. It's almost impossible to try and take in the whole landscape. We tend to sort of focus in on a very specific aspect of the overall puzzle, but self-evidently, I would have thought, trying to kind of understand all these kind of moving parts, try as best we can to kind of understand the knock-on effects, the implications of all these kind of different areas. It's a gargantuan task, but I think we have to steel ourselves for it, because I think it's true. If we kind of over-index or over-obsess on one piece, then we're almost certainly kind of missing a trick elsewhere.
Did you want to come in there, Tim? And I saw you nodding with a lot of what Andrew was saying.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on 2 points, actually. One is around the kind of the fear factor. There's as we all know, there's one side of the coin is kind of a dystopian view. I would actually argue that that the fear of AI, or the narrative of fear around AI is no different to past technologies. Going back to the horse being taken over by the car, it's probably the same level of fear. I'd say the difference here is the pace of change, and I think that's the uncertainty that's created, is that the pace of change at the moment is far greater than we've seen. So I just wanted to touch on that, and I think, again, going back to my eternal optimism, I think we're right to be fearful, because that raises the questions around ethics and bias. But at the same time, it's exciting at the same time, because it's very easy to talk about the bad behaviors around AI, but actually the opportunity for good is massive. It's absolutely huge, and we must remember that these artificial intelligence are created at the moment by human intelligence. Now, it's a different point, I suppose, if we go on to Sylvia's point around artificial general intelligence. That's kind of a whole different kettle of fish. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point. I think the way my view at the moment is that the fear is understandable, but I think the fear is more around the pace of change as opposed to AI itself and the technology itself. And then I also just wanted to touch on the point made about the kind of inequalities and the potential, the bottom rung of the employment ladder, if you like, and are they kind of most at risk? Just to look at that on another side of the coin, I was chatting to a university professor around natural language processing the other day, and they did a study which is pretty interesting. Is to what extent are we reducing our intelligence with an over-reliance on artificial intelligence, right? So, and the analogy she used was, the percentage of children in education that can do long division has dramatically declined since the age of the calculator, right? So it's a really nice analogy to then bring forward to their experience at university, where they are having students writing essays using AI, right? Because they deem the generation of having to write something is redundant. So it's a really interesting other side of the coin of actually, do we reach this kind of precipice where we actually reduce our what we consider traditional intelligence because of an over-reliance on artificial intelligence? Now, I know that's a really broad point, but it was just one that sprung to mind when Andrew mentioned his.
Yeah, can I just jump in on that? Because it's maybe sort of think of Professor Ethan Molick of the Wharton Business School in the US. If you're not aware of Professor Molick, I can heartily commend to you to follow him on LinkedIn or X, formerly known as Twitter. Prodigious kind of work in AI and its impact on education and wider fields. But he conducted a piece of research recently in conjunction with the Boston Consulting Group, the management consultancy firm. They took 750 consultants, split them in two groups, said to one group, right, for the next 2 months, do your work, use AI. And the other group, do your work, don't use AI. And let's compare the findings. Top line figure, the AI group could do more work, did it more quickly, and the quality of their work was perceived by an independent peer group as being 40% better than the non-AI group. However, the nuance was in the AI group, those people that over-relied on the use of AI saw the quality of their work decline. In fact, their own skill and judgment was perceived to have degraded, and they came up with this phrase, asleep at the wheel. So to Tina's point, absolutely, delegating all responsibility to the AI and the technology is clearly not a good idea. And this idea that over-reliance on AI will have that knock-on effect of degrading our own human expertise and intelligence, and that should not be forgotten in the slightest. There is still an absolute requirement, I think, to make sure that we are still focused on ensuring that people do have the necessary training and support to develop human qualities. Alan Turing, even in the 1940s, talked about the distinction between ingenuity and intuition. His thought experiment was, well, imagine computing resource, etc., is not an issue. Would we reach a stage where basically the machines can do everything that we can do, and our own expertise and human judgment and intuition is no longer important? And even he said, no, there are always going to be things that only we are really kind of capable of. And I think that's again another really important point to make. Yeah, in fact, the title of the CIPR report we published recently was called "Humans Still Needed More Than Ever." And I think we should definitely continue to emphasize that point, that ultimately, as far as I can see, we are still in charge. The machines haven't taken over. And personally, they're not going to independently take over anytime soon. More importantly, it's us. It's human beings and the decisions that we make and the uses that we put the technology to that really that's what we should be more concerned about, I think.
Okay, I'm going to come to the some of the questions in the chat. So if you've got questions, do keep them coming. So Sylvia, I was just going to ask you to pick up one. So one of the questions we've had in is, as AI evolves, as companies are building their own neuro-linguistic programming chatbots and other machine learning RPA bots are working alongside human colleagues, they're becoming able to manage more subtle cultural, gender differences and ethical considerations. So the question is, should diversity and inclusion be refined beyond culture, gender, religion, etc., to include our colleague AI bots, and what could that look like in your view?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Dana asked that question. So thank you so much, Dana, for your question. I think this is really one of the most exciting aspects of the current AI revolution. It's the way we shape our relationship with the machine. And I'll give you an example. When I was in IBM, I was working on AI technology for call centers, and sort of how you would create the bot and what kind of language and what kind of voice. And at the time, there were people saying, well, you should give it the bot a female voice, because otherwise, then people would are more prone to interact with it. It sounds more friendly and so on. So it's kind of slightly sexist, but it's like it's kind of the kind of stuff that I think we have to be careful about. I think so if we create bots that work with us, and I think also we will have the chance of creating bots where we can inject part of our personality into them, how we write, how we interact with other team members, how we interact with different cultures. We really have to be very, very mindful of the data we use to train those bots. And it is, not much has been done in that area yet, but I think that instead of just focusing on the task of the bot, it's also we need to focus on the personality that we want the bot to have, to shape it, and also on the interaction. So when I was in IBM, for instance, we were teaching the bots to have a sense of humor, because it's very stressful for humans to interact with machines all the time, to interact with an entity that has no sense of humor, that understands no nuances. So it's all that kind of stuff. It's definitely coming, but my advice is the data is one thing, and then the personality, if you like, of the bot is another.
Well, I'm sure my kids will look forward to the day when they can interact with Alexa, and Alexa has a more nuanced sense of humour.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, there's a tool called character.ai. So if you want to right now, you can interact with AI replicas of Elon Musk and thousands of other actors and personalities. That's already here.
Excellent, thank you. Andrew, I was just going to ask you to come in on a point that Sylvia made, I suppose, just a kind of the relationship with humans that she was talking about, and just bring it back to one of the questions we've had, which I think is quite a sort of common question at the moment, so and a common concern. So could AI be more of a threat to, I suppose, more senior staff as well as junior staff?
Sure.
And what the kind of what the issues are there?
Yeah. Well, again, if I can refer back to Professor Molik's experiment with BCG, that was another finding from that, which was that where you looked at the skill level of people prior to using AI. People who were perceived to have lower levels of skills saw the greatest level of improvement of the output of their work by using AI. So the optimistic view is that all boats float on a rising tide. Is that good news if it means that it can dramatically kind of improve the skill level of people through the use of it. When they looked at the use of AI by more senior personnel within the firm, there was still an improvement, but nowhere near as great. So the kind of the benefit to more senior people was nowhere near as great a magnitude as lower level skill. Now, that's one single test. I guess we shouldn't draw too much from it, but absolutely true for people who do have more kind of senior roles and ostensibly have more experience. Should they be concerned that maybe the possibility to kind of upskill people with less experience more quickly and so on and so forth? Again, maybe that there are other variables that might be at play. If those senior people have further training in AI, maybe they'll equally see the similar kind of step change in the quality of their work. At the end of the day, it all boils down to decisions that we as human beings are going to make, or certainly those in positions of power to make decisions about the implementation of the technology. How simplistically, are there people out there now thinking, well, great, let's just get AI to do it all and we can just fire a bunch of people? I'm sure there are people out there thinking along those lines. In fact, there are examples of that already happening around the world. Versus, well, we can take a different view that says perhaps certainly the nature of the roles of people, whether that's at a senior level and junior level, may well have to, or probably almost certainly will change. I think the bigger issue is not the tech. If you think about it, Microsoft. Let's not forget, Microsoft only a week or so ago began rolling out its Copilot program, basically bringing AI to potentially hundreds of millions of people around the world, utilizing tools they're already familiar with, AI in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, all of that. What they haven't yet done, it would seem, is that there's no user manual. I mean, you're potentially giving the keys of a Ferrari to people who don't have a driving license and never had taken a driving test, saying, there you go, just get on with it. I think that is something else. The AI literacy, training, helping people to better understand how to use the tech, but equally to understand what it's good at, what it's not so good at, understand its limitations. I think one of the curious things about AI is that it is artificial. It's kind of weird. We humans often expect it to be good at certain things. Oh, well, it's a machine. If I go to ChatGPT and say what's 2 + 2, it'll say, well, 4. It'll probably get that right. But if I say what's 15 times 39, it may well get it wrong. And people go, well, how's that possible? It's a computer. Certainly, large language models are not built to handle that kind of thing well. They're large language. They're statistical probability machines. Again, LLMs have got no concept of the outside world. People think, well, it's made that up. Well, of course it has. It doesn't know that person even exists. It's simply come up with a kind of plausible probabilistic output. We're the ones that still hold the responsibility for examining its output and then deciding whether or not we believe that is fit for the purpose to which we wish to put it. We're all evolving techniques to improve the accuracy and the quality of its output, but ultimately we take responsibility for how we utilize that technology, in my humble opinion.
I'm going to pick up on a few of the points that you raised, and one of the questions that we've had in and asked Tiernan to answer this one. So I think the points around kind of upskilling, not having to use the manual, and one of the questions we've had in about what efforts does the panel think should be made to raise the level of AI literacy generally. So if you want to come in on that one, please, Tiernan.
Sure, yeah. And I think that will probably link to a couple of questions that I've seen coming in around kind of practical applications for people on the call. I think in terms of literacy, I think I'll come back to my point at the start of the call, which was don't start with the AI or technology, start with the problem. So if anyone in any job has a challenge that they think might be able to be automated, even if they don't know the solution just yet, and I say this to my team all the time, it is if there's a problem, can it be solved with AI? And the answer maybe no, or not yet, at least. But chances are there is a way that AI can be used to kind of solve, and that for me is part of the digital literacy around AI. I think there is many conversations and narratives going around of the big picture, but clearly ChatGPT is making the headlines, whereas something like fraud detection for a financial institution is not making the big headlines because it's such a narrow use case. But I would say when it comes to digital literacy, AI literacy and practical applications, is start with a problem. And I'll go back to a couple of examples that we work on, which is exactly that. Is we are a location-based, a chat-based location digital assistant. Now, there are many organizations have use for that, but when it comes to kind of behavior change or communication, there's many kind of comms teams and engagement teams, for example, at the Environment Agency, where they don't have a way of educating the masses around their risk in the community, and they don't have a way to educate the masses on or change their behaviors around helping themselves reduce their risk when it comes to flooding in the home. Equally, I talked about practical use cases around changing behaviors around recycling and reducing contamination going to landfill, etc., from recycling. And these are all kind of, our platform is a communication engagement tool that utilizes AI at its core. And I'm just using those as an example because that's the teams that use us at councils and the Environment Agency and in the private sector. They start with a problem. So we do have people speak to us and say, oh, you're an AI location chat platform, like, what can we use you for? And my question back to them is, okay, what do you do in your job? What does your team do? What does your department do, etc.? Or you as a council or hospital or property developer, what are your major problems? And we'll tell you if our solution or our narrow view of AI can help you with that. And they're the questions I think to be asking. And there's a question in the chat, which was, how to get started. Where do I go? And I would say, what are your major challenges? And chances are there's either an existing solution that can help you with that, or there might not be, and it might be, in its infancy. And I would, that's point one, I think. And point two is quite an interesting question that came in from John Phillips, is around justifying the cost as well. And I think that's really, really important, because as everything's changing so quickly, there's an increased risk of AI solutions out there that are providing AI for the sake of AI, right? Or providing technology for the sake of technology. And I'd just be wary of that. We're very conscious that when we help our partners, actually we're both helping the problem, but also helping them justify the business need. So where's the saving, where's the generation, where's the kind of the business value or outcome, and we monitor that and report on that. I think it's too easy to kind of get caught up in tech for tech's sake, rather than tying that back to actually solving a problem and demonstrating an outcome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that's clearly the case, certainly with behaviour change, that working out what the problem is the single thing that most people need to do first before deciding what technology that you want to use. Sylvia, I'm going to come to you next, because I know you need to leave for 2 o'clock on the dot. So there's been quite a few questions about kind of, I suppose, people wanting inspiration, where you get started, kind of how some practical tips to use AI and where they start. And we'll plug Andrew's course in a second as well, because that's a very good place to start as well. Did you want to come in, Sylvia?
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you what we are doing in our practice, right? So we are doing a series of innovation sessions where we create a list of all the use cases that we would use AI for, right, around change. So that is, writing comms, creating a comms program, creating a piece around stakeholder analysis and stakeholder engagement, creating a piece around training content, training modules. And so then we go and match that to the AI that is currently available and the applications, right? So we basically, we start with what we need, we start with the problem, and then we match it to the technology. Now, the technology is not only the technology, and probably not particularly the technology that is publicly available, because we deal with clients, so it has to be behind the firewall. And so it is a version of ChatGPT that is developed by us together with Microsoft or whatever other vendor. So I think I would recommend starting, really look at your problem and look at what is available out there. And also I would have a quick comment about the training piece that we were discussing earlier, because that's directly connected to where do we start. So I have seen a lot of efforts. There are a lot of efforts at the moment to train absolutely everybody in a company on AI, right? Because it's a flavor of the month, because the the investors and analysts are watching. So I don't really think that's necessarily the right way to do it. Every technology rollout, you have to look at adoption and in terms of, demographics, geographies, cultures, technology uptake. So AI is not different. So don't do a piece that, just basically is for everybody, because that's not how we can go about adoption. Also, another thought is, don't treat it as another ERP. It's not. It's a mind shift. As we said before, we're talking about training bots and sort of injecting a personality into them so that they can interact with our stakeholders. We're talking about potentially the problem of bias and having to mitigate that. So you see, it's not another ERP. So when you train people about AI, create some excitement by all means, because it is an exciting technology, but also do focus on the mind shift that it requires.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask Andrew and Tiernan to come in with some final thoughts. Sylvia, I know you're going to have to head off in a second, so I did want to say thank you so much for coming along. And if anyone does need to leave at 2 o'clock, we will be sending out a recording from today. But I'm just going to ask Andrew and Tiernan to come in with any final thoughts about where to kind of get started with AI. Who wants to go? Andrew, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, apart from my completely self-serving...
Yes, I was going to say, sorry, I should say, Andrew wants very, very good calls for CIPR. He hasn't paid me to say this. But that is a very good place to start.
But that aside, I mean, it's probably one of the most common questions that I've been asked over the last 11 months. You know, where do I start? And you know, not trying to avoid the question. I mean, one can provide certain pointers. I mean, Tiernan's made the point already very eloquently. You know, look at your existing problems or workflows. That's the obvious starting point. How do we currently do things? And you know, what opportunity is there to use AI to kind of either do it or at least, you know, augment it? For me, the more exciting thing is that with AI, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. It's only once you start to use it yourself that you actually then begin to figure out for yourself how it might be used. That's when the light bulbs go on. You go, I'd even thought about that, but you know, maybe that's a way to utilize it. I can just try it now and see, oh wow, that is something that I didn't expect, and there's value in that. So I think that combination of the short-term gain of using it to gain an efficiencies on how you already do things, but longer term, new ways of doing things, new approaches I can't believe it won't, you know, open up. And again, just to reiterate, you know, it ain't going to slow down anytime soon. So whether you like it or not, this is the new normal. In fact, if you're still allowed to say that.
Very exciting times ahead, clearly. Tiernan, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, you know, if we're talking, boil it down to right now, you know, everyone on the call, you know, what are you working on, you know, right now? If it's comms related, you know, what campaign or project or theme are you working on right now? From our experience, you know, when we work with comms and engagement professionals, you know, the challenge usually is reaching more people, hearing from more people, whether it's about educating or gathering insight, whatever it is. AI can help with all of these things. So I would say, you know, start now, explore, experiment, but you know, what's on your plate right now? And if we're talking about kind of comms and behavior change, there will be tools that are using AI out there. You don't have to go direct to creating a large language model. There will be tools that are already using AI out there. And just a final thought on I think Dana's question or someone's question. Oh, sorry, no, Karen's question, which was, do you think there's job security questions around comms professionals? I'd say profoundly, absolutely not. AI is a tool, and AI software can be a tool to make comms professionals more effective, efficient, and powerful. You know, comms professionals are going to be the puppeteer using many, many different tools and methods. So a big no on that question for me. It's going to become more powerful, not redundant.
On that note, I'm going to say we're over time, so thank you so much to our panel and to everyone for coming along this lunchtime. We could carry on discussing this for hours and hours and hours, so I think this might be the start of a kind of long-running webinar series. But thank you everyone so much for coming along. We will send out a recording, and if you're CIPR member, do log your CPD points. So thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you at another event soon.
Thank you.